Welcome back to another episode of Expats in Ukraine with your host, me, Corey. Today, my guest, he's from the UK. I've been wanting him to be on my channel for so long. I'm glad he's finally here. He's an author. He's part of the Ukrainian military. His name is Aiden Aslin. What's up, Aiden? How are you, bud?
Pleasure to be here, finally.
Yeah, finally, man. I've been trying to get you on for so long. You're such a busy guy, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so have you seen this show before? Because I have like this new opening format that I like to do.
I watched a few episodes.
Okay. So then, yeah, so you'll know what's coming next then. So I like to do this icebreaker so people can understand, the real Aiden. So I'll give you two options and you just pick whichever one you prefer, okay? It's not too difficult, don't worry. So first one, scone or bublik?
Bublik.
Bublik, okay, right on. Scones, I love scones, man. I'm gonna have to take scone over bublik any day, man. But I respect the Ukrainian inside of you. Okay, next is the Trent or the Dnipro?
That's a hard one. I mean, both. Like this is the River Trent, yeah.
River Trent, yeah.
Yeah, this is a hard one because the River Trent's like full of like chemical waste, but so is the Dnipro. I'll probably go with the Dnipro because it's the one I actually swim in.
Yeah, exactly, man. They're both polluted, but Dnipro's bigger, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'd never seen the Trent. I've seen Dnipro many times and I love it. And you know what Vodochrestia is? It's like
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so basically in wintertime, it's like this rebirth thing. So people swim in the Dnipro, they dunk themselves in like 3 times. It's usually
I've done
freezing.
this before.
Yeah. So I've done that a couple times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Dnipro because of that. Next, bangers and mash or grechka and cutlet?
That's a hard one. I like bangers and mash, but depending on who's making the grechka and cutlets, it would probably have to be that.
Yeah, okay. What if it's puzata hata?
No, if it was like babushka, like grechka and like cutlets, then it'd be that.
Yeah, I get like a lot of mixed feelings about puzata hata. Personally, I really like it. I had some guests saying they don't like it at all.
I like it. It's cheap food, but like, I would choose like a babushka's like meal any day.
Well, of course, yeah, of course. But yeah, I like puzata hata. I'm a puzata hata fan, guys. So last one, Newark-on-Trent or Mariupol?
I would say the truth, but I'd probably offend a lot of people, so I'd go with Newark.
Newark-on-Trent. Okay, there's a lot of Newark-on-Trent people gonna watch, right?
Possibly.
Okay, so what is there to do in Newark-on-Trent? I'm just curious. I've never heard about it
we
besides
have the local benefit office. Like quite a lot of people go there to collect their benefits. Like, there's not really much to do there.
Yeah. Okay, but it's your hometown, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, fair enough. But I'll tell you what then. This is like the $1 million question. This is what everyone probably asks you. This is what everyone asks me, at least. What brought you to Ukraine, and why the hell are you here, man?
I'd probably say there's quite a few mixed reasons. I mean, if you like read the Russian propaganda, like they would say like I'm a lover of Slav women, as they have already said. But like, really, I think it's more because I was dissatisfied with the way like Ukraine was like left in the dark after the events of like Euromaidan. And I just felt that if my country's not going to do anything, then I'm going to come to Ukraine and at least show that people haven't forgot about them.
And what year did you come to Ukraine?
Initially, my first time I came in 2018 in February.
Okay, and you were you joined the military right away. You didn't take any time as a civilian.
Not straight away. Initially, we came. We were still trying to figure out how to actually do it. Like we knew you could, but like it wasn't as easy as it is now, where like you can just cross the border and go to the booth that's there and just join. Like back then, it was a lot more bureaucratic and it was a lot more foggy with like exactly how you do that process. So it took me initially probably like 5-6 months, because in the first 3 months that we were here, we ended up like overstaying our visa. We eventually got to the recruitment office, did all our medical and everything, but then they saw that our visa was expired, so we had to like leave the country and then come back to continue the process. So I ended up leaving for 3 months. I went and chilled in like Serbia for like those 3 months, which is a pretty cool place despite the government there. And then I came back in September time. Took me like a week to finish my recruitment process, and after that I was sent down to Mykolaiv, to the Mykolaiv Naval Training Center.
And what year was this?
2018 September.
Still 2018. Okay. So before we get to kind of, your experience in Ukraine, I want to talk about your previous experience. You were in the UK military, correct?
No.
No?
No.
You were in YPG, right?
Yeah, YPG. Just
okay,
YPG.
yeah, I thought you had some experience before that.
No.
You just went straight to YPG.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, man. Explain like your time at YPG. And explain what YPG is to people that aren't familiar.
So I think for those who don't know, the YPG, it's an acronym for like Yekaterina Perestina Gel, which in English is the People's Protection Unit. And again, as I'm sure everyone's aware, what's been going on in Syria, for the past 10 years. I initially went out there in probably just spring 2015, again, because I saw the images that were coming out of Iraq, out of Syria, with the emergence of ISIS taking power with all the territory that they seized and all the atrocities that started coming to light. And again, at this point, I was frustrated that, especially after we had pulled out of Iraq a few years previously, I was frustrated that it just been all for nothing, and now people are being massacred because of our mistakes. So initially, I chose to go over there because I saw that the Kurds were pretty much the only group that were fighting against ISIS to try and protect the people there, and I also saw that they would take in foreigners as volunteers. So initially, I just said I'm just going to go there. At least I can say I'm doing something rather than sit at home and complain about what I see on the news. Because if no one else is going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And so I chose to stand by my principles and do that. And at this point, before I went to Syria, I was a civilian. I had no military background. And my day job, in Britain at the time, I was working as a care worker for autistic adults, and I also worked security. So it's quite a big leap, within terms of environment. But looking back on it now, when I think back to 2015, especially now that I'm older and after my time in the Ukrainian military, I just look back on myself as being a bit naive, especially with what I went into. However, I don't regret that I went, and if I could do it again, I probably would.
Yeah, and so how did you enter, YPG area, so Kurdistan? You went through Turkey, you went through Syria?
So it's actually pretty easy to join a civil war these days. I mean, back then when we were using Facebook.
I'm sorry, I don't know. That sounded really funny to me. If you want to join a civil war, it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Just go to a country.
So it's incredibly easy. Now we've got social media.
Yeah.
I actually went on Facebook. I found a Kurdish group called called Lines of Rojava back then, and they actually helped me into getting to where I needed. They told me all the information, what I needed to know, and then eventually I booked a flight from London to Sulaymaniyah, which is in the Kurdistan region in Iraq.
They have a direct flight from London.
Yeah, I mean the Kurdistan region in Iraq is it's pretty safe compared to the rest of Iraq. It's a mini Dubai, so to speak, and it's pretty untouched from the war that was ongoing there. And I landed in Iraq. I was meeting by my contact there. Stayed in a safe house for a few days, and then eventually I was whisked away to the Iraqi border region with Syria. I spent 3 weeks there waiting for our time to cross, and then when the time came, we walked into Syria. I think it was a 10 kilometer hike, in the middle of the night. At the time we were crossing it how many people crossed the American-Mexican border, trying to avoid the Peshmerga at the time.
Yeah.
And then we crossed the Tigris River in a blow-up boat.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Sean was in Peshmerga, right?
No, he was also in YPG.
YPG, okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, this guy Troy, that was a previous guest.
Yeah.
He was in Peshmerga. That's right.
It gets so it's really weird politically over there. All the different political Kurdish groups you've got, they support each other, but then there's some groups that are politically they don't help each other, but sometimes especially on the border region at that time, because the Kurds and they're fighting against ISIS, both of them, they just kind of turn the other way sometimes. So
yeah,
There's like nothing like directly like threatening. It's just that depending on who's on shift, like
Yeah. Well, it's super interesting. Yeah, so I connected you with Troy, but yeah, he's Peshmerga. It's crazy. So anyway, so you were crossing.
yeah. So we crossed the river. We're like crossed in like a blow up dinghy that the Kurds had brought with them, and then we were in Syria. And at that time, it was still pretty like early, like in like way before like Raqqa had been liberated. So there was still like quite a lot of territory that ISIS had held.
This was 2018?
2015.
15, sorry, 15, yeah.
And we went for like 2 weeks like training. But all it was just like, this is an AK, like this is how it shoots. Don't do this, don't do that. And then we got sent to the front line.
Oh wow.
But looking at the time, we had like a lot of like Western like ex-military guys that were over there. So like you'd normally stick with those guys and like shadow them.
Yeah.
Like just taking what they know, just so you can learn. Because like over there, it's like literally a matter of like life or death. So you're forced, because of the job you're doing, like you're forced to take in everything that you can take.
Yeah, and so you seen a lot of combat there, right?
In the first couple of months, not really. We got sent to some defensive frontline position, and then after a few weeks, we realized there was an operation going on, and then we transferred back and then transferred to the ongoing operation. And it was only at that point that we started seeing like actual like combat. We didn't really take anything. Like it was more, well, we're getting shot at and we tried to storm a position, and then we would pull back, and then we're just calling like airstrike on like the position, and then basically the airstrikes like cleared the majority of the way for us. We liberated the town of Tel Abyad, which is just on the Turkish border. And at that time, that was when the forces from the west were pushing towards them as well. So we pretty much like encircled Tel Abyad, and I think like going on from there, we had like quite a few operations. We had like Tabka, which was the major one in 2017. 2017, and Al Hol and a few others. But like I think it was in mid 2017, after we finished with Tabka, like I just had enough, wanted to come back to Britain, and try to readjust myself.
But when you came back, you were arrested, right?
Yeah, so I previously left Syria 2 times. The first time I left in January 2016. So I'd been there for like 9 months and wanted to go back for arrest. I got arrested on the Terrorism Act. They didn't charge me. They were like trying to find if I'd committed any offense. So like they took my passport from.
Was the YPG like labeled as a terrorist group?
No.
Then.
Initially, they were just concerned that I was like possibly like ISIS, like from the questions that they were asking me, because they kept asking me like what are my religious beliefs. So I was on bail, like pre-charge bail, for like the next like 8 months. I didn't have a passport. I had to go sign in at the police station for like 3 times a week.
Wow.
And then come around, I think it was like mid-October, like I got my passport back, and I was like free to travel. And then a week later, I was back in Syria, pretty much, and stayed there till I think it was June. And then just before I left, we were just west of Raqqa, and I think it was just, we could see the outskirts of the city, but like at that point, like I didn't have anyone like Westerner wise. I wanted to be with Westerners, and I just called it quits, because like.
Oh, okay.
Like I didn't want to like be a part if I had no one to like rely on. So I ended up leaving through disagreements with like my commander at the time, and then ended up going back to North Iraq, and then went to Greece for like 3 months, and then went back to Britain and got arrested again.
Of course, bro.
Luckily this time it wasn't as long. I think it was only like 3 months on bail, so it wasn't that bad.
So I mean, you must have, I guess, felt your calling, I guess, in the military or just in a combat role, because shortly after that you came to Ukraine, right?
Yeah. So I think like another reason as well, like coming to Ukraine, was like I tried to readjust in Britain, but it just it wasn't for me, like the culture. And I'd been following like Ukraine like since like Maidan, like since the early days of the war. So I knew a lot about it already, and I sympathized like with the Ukrainian cause as well. And I saw Ukraine like again like with the Kurds, like we'd pretty much everyone in Europe had forgotten that there's actually a war still going on. So I figured I'll go to Ukraine, serve in the military for three years because I knew at that time that they took foreigners. Serve in the military and then just start a new life here, and at the same time, like give them what I can offer, and that's what I've been doing. And I've like literally fell in love with the country since the first few months that I was in Ukraine.
Yeah, and before I ask about your impressions, 'cause I remember before you were saying it was so bureaucratic if you want to join like I guess the military here in Ukraine. I had a guest on. Do you know Swampy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had Swampy on, and he came like I think in 2015, 2016, so like a long time ago, like after Maidan, and he said it was very bureaucratic, the same thing. But then he said Azov was just accepting anyone, so he just joined Azov right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you get integrated?
You mean like integrated into like the cultural system?
No, and it's like the military.
Oh,
yeah.
so yeah, like once we figured it out, we went to the recruitment office in Satorshin. We literally just turned up, told them that we wanted to join, and then we got given a recruitment officer who was our case handler, and he basically helped us. Like we had to go to the hospital to get a bunch of like medical tests, and we had to go see the psychologist so we can get a certificate to say that we're not like crazy. I mean, I'd disagree because who joins like a foreign military in the East? But we had to go through like pretty much the whole same standard that you'd go through like any other military. We had to go through like a criminal background check, and then again, like because of my visa, I wasn't able to go in straight away, so I had to come back like after the 3 months. But like as soon as I got back, it took like a week to get all the paperwork accumulated and finished, and then that's when they told me to go to Mykolaiv and go to the Ukrainian Naval Training Center.
Okay, and which unit did you join, if you don't mind me asking?
So initially, I applied to get an invitation from the 137th Marine Battalion, which is based in Odessa under the 35th Marine Brigade. So initially, that was the first unit I was going to. I went to the training center for 2 months boot camp. And we spent like a lot of time like studying like Ukrainian military law, medicine, and after the first month, we were sworn in. Like we did our oath to the Ukrainian state, and then we started doing our weapons training and tactical training. And when we finished that, we were sent to like our units. I was sent to Odessa to go join my unit, and I think I was there roughly for about 4 or 5 months.
Is this because you know Crusader?
Yeah.
Is this where you met him, like in this unit?
I met Crusader when I first came to Ukraine.
Okay.
He was like helping me out a lot, like when I was in Kiev, like with what I need to do and like what I need. And
yeah, he was a previous guest, and yeah, I met him in Odessa.
Yeah,
and we became friends. We would hang out in Odessa.
Yeah, he's
and
a cool
yeah,
guy.
He's a really cool guy, really good photographer as well. You've seen his Instagram, and yeah, I remember seeing photos of you on his Instagram. I'm like,
actually, it was so when I came, I was actually speaking to Crusader. I've just remembered I was speaking to Crusader, because I found him. I can't remember how I found him. I was like asking him like what do I need to do? Like how do I get there? Like what do I need to know about? And he actually helped me a lot with like getting stuff sorted, and he like because he speaks like a very like good level of like Russian.
Oh yeah, his Russian's quite good.
So like
yeah.
he helped us out a lot with like if we needed translations or just how the system works in regards to some stuff. So like he helped us out a lot, and then also when I went to Odessa, like we hung out a lot because like he lives in Odessa.
Yeah.
And I remember we went out drinking on New Year's in 2018, like for the New Year's. I remember we were drinking in some bar, and one of my friends, Roma, who was also serving with me, we got absolutely like shit faced as you do.
Yeah. It's New Year's,
and it was probably the only time that I ended up like nearly dying because I got so drunk. I was like trying to find my way back to my hostel. I like lost where my hostel was, and I ended up walking around like Odessa completely smashed out. It was like -20 at the time.
Oh wow.
My phone was dead, and I was like, literally, my thoughts were like, I'm gonna die on the street tonight. And luckily, I don't know how it happened, but luckily there was some guys from my battalion that saw me, and like they guided me in the right direction, and I managed to get back to the hostel. There was a party still going on, so I started drinking, and then I just woke up the next day.
Yeah, no, I've partied with a Crusader like a few times, like in Odessa.
Yeah.
Now, a really fun guy, and he's also a DJ. You know this, right?
Yeah.
He's a DJ. He showed me some really cool places in Odessa, like Devir 12. It's like door 12 or something like this. No, a really cool guy. But anyways, so back to what you were saying. So you joined this group like in Odessa, right? And you were there for a while.
Yeah.
And then you got your training, and then what?
So we went to the unit. I went on. There was a training course that the British were doing at the time called Operation Orbital. We got selected to go on that. That was in early February time. I must have lasted about 3 days on that course before the British realized there was another Brit there. And then the British senior, like the guy that was in charge, like he said like I had to be removed from the course because it's like too political for me to be there because I'm a British citizen. And ironically, I actually met the guy who told me that I had to like leave like last year when I went to go speak with the British military, which was like funny. Like we're good friends now. But I ended up leaving that and went back to the base. And where our base was located, it was a bit far from the city. And at the time, I'd started dating someone that was like in Mykolaiv. So I put in a transfer request to go to a unit in Mykolaiv because this unit I wanted to go to, it was inside the city.
True love.
Pretty much. I'd known her for like 2 weeks. And went to Mykolaiv. I mean, it took like 3 months maybe. I deployed with this unit I was with, and then in between, like on the front line, I transferred to the 1st Marine Battalion, to the Air Assault Company. And we were based around at the time, they were deployed on the front line as well. So I literally went from one position.
When you say front line, like where?
Like this is like in Donbas, like east of Mariupol.
Oh, okay.
So initially, like my old unit who I was with, like we were based in Dukachivska area. Like, so I'd left that area and then literally gone down south, and we were now on the Pavlopol area, like around Shirokino, Pavlopol.
Okay.
Like location. And that's where I like continued the serve for like the next like 3 years.
And so you served there next 3 years. So let's fast forward a bit. It's February, the first week, or say it's like February 20th, 2022. What are you doing? Like Russia hasn't invaded yet. Where are you? What are you doing? Do you think they're going to invade?
If it's so, the first week of February, I was on vacation. I'd taken like 2-week vacation because the commander asked us if we want to take it. And I took it straight away because I knew like war's coming.
How did you know?
I was just like following like everything that was going on. I was like keeping track of like all the equipment that was being moved through like open source. And then also back in like late October, we had the provocation from the Russian side where they were shooting positions with the artillery.
Where were they shooting?
I think this was around Syria. So there was like, a lot of people have forgotten it now, but there was footage of like Ukraine using the Bayraktar drone to like destroy one of the artillery guns as retaliation because they wanted to de-escalate.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw the Russians like using that's when I knew like this is like a stepping stone for something. And week by week, it just went in the direction of war. And I think like by the end of like November, that's like when I was concrete that like, yeah, it's like no longer a matter of like if, it's like now a matter of when. So I knew it was coming just because everything, like all the signs were there.
But where were you? Like say we'll start in November then, since you said that. Where were you in November?
So in November, we were east of Mariupol. We're just literally deployed to the front line to rotate one of the other units. So like we were pretty much in the forefront, and like we were in the worst spot as well because like the Mariupol sector, like we've got the front line in front of us, but we've also got like the corridor to Crimea. So we know if anything does happen, they're going to be coming from Crimea straight from behind. So we knew we weren't in the best position. But at the time, like, it didn't really phase us. Like, if it happens, it happens.
Yeah.
And I think it wasn't until probably the night before was it the 24th or the 23rd when the war began?
24th.
Yeah, I think it was the night of the night before the 24th. That's when we got the command, turn all electronics off. Like when I heard that, like I knew straight away it was going to happen. A few days before, I was at the logistic hub, and like our units, we were painting identification markers on our trucks, which we'd never done before. So I knew like this is pretty serious. So like we were pretty certain like it's going to be any moment now. And then I was on guard duty at the time when the invasion started. Because I was in a mortar unit at the time, because when my contract finishes and I signed a new contract, I transferred to the mortar company.
So you're on guard duty east of Mariupol, you said, right?
Yeah, so I'm on guard duty, well, radio duty, because we're mortars, we're a bit lazy, so we just do radio watch. And I was the only one awake. I was just playing Angry Birds on my phone while I was like listening for the radio. And while I'm like laid down, like just doing duty, I just hear like these grad rockets, like boom, 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 and I knew it. It's like it's hard to describe. It's like a very distinct sound. Like you know it if you can hear it. And I was like, okay, that's not mortars or artillery. And then I realized what it was, and I jumped down and like woke my commander up. I was like, sir, like Russians are shooting grads, like.
And this was 24th in the morning or 23rd at night still?
This was the 23rd at night. I think it was like 2 a.m.
2 a.m. Okay.
Yeah, in the morning of the 24th.
Yeah.
Commander woke up. He was like half asleep, and he listened. He couldn't hear anything. He said, "Oh, it's nothing. Just go back to sleep." And I was like a bit uneasy because like I know everything's going down, but like there's no alarm for us yet, so we're just waiting. And then eventually I finished my shift. I told the guy that like took over, was like, keep your kit on, be ready, because we're going to be going to shoot soon. And I went to lay down. I had like all my kit on, like tried to sleep for like 20 minutes, and then in our bunker we had a tablet, and it was connected to the commander, who they would relay the information or tell us like to go work, and we had an alarm for every time the commander like messaged us. So we've got like a very distinct tune. There's a song on it called there's a song by a band called Gayazov. Like it's like a Russian band. Yeah. But every time that would play, like you'd always get like the hairs on the back of your shoulders like stick up.
Nothing's gonna happen.
It went off, and we knew that was the moment that like the war started, and we went out, like shot like a few fire missions.
Wow. So they invaded, you got ready, you went out, and you were trying to hold the position, but then you got pushed back to Mariupol, right?
Yeah. So initially we were basically we had a bit of luck on our side. Like the weather was really atrocious, like heavily, like pissing it down with rain. It was also bad for us because it also meant it was more difficult for us to like, move around in the trench, but just as bad for those guys. But eventually we were given the order to retreat because we just couldn't hold the line. So we ended up retreating 3 kilometers back, and we're basically pippa-potting like back. And I think it was on the February 27th we arrived to the Ilichar like steelworks north of Mariupol. And we basically got reorganized, and units were being redeployed for the defense of the city. A lot of guys were like quickly getting adjusted with like information, like what's going on, like what's the news, like how's everyone's families and all that stuff.
Yeah. So you were in the northern part of the Azovstal, right? It's Ilich, not Azovstal, but Ilich, right?
Yeah, this is Ilich. So Azovstal, it's like in the southeast of the city, and then the Ilichar is like in the northeast of the city. We got there, like the units were getting redeployed, so we had like National Guard, like Azov, like Ukrainian Marines, like pretty much everyone, the police, like everyone was like getting ready for like this defense of the city. When we knew the Russians were coming from us from Crimea as well, so we knew it was going to be quite a tough fight ahead. At this point as well, like we knew the rest of Ukraine was like taking a beating, especially like north of Kiev and everything. So we wasn't really sure like what the outcome was going to be, but like we still continued.
So you were just defending, I guess, this Ilich, right? Ilisha.
Yeah, so initially
And how far were the Russians away? You were doing artillery, or
when we initially got there, they were like pretty far. I mean, we still had they were like basically tailing us from like where we've just retreated from, but it like took them like a few days for them to catch up. It was probably on, I think, the 6th of March that the Russians from Crimea eventually arrived, and it was sometime around that date that and it was the 10th of March that they encircled us. So like we're probably like less than like a kilometer, 2 kilometers from like the Russians, like where we were anyway, just because there was like a barren like waste between us, like gray zone.
At which point did you figure out you were surrounded, and like what do you do about that? What is your mentality at this point?
At the time, like I knew exactly what was going to happen. I'd already seen that like we'd been overwhelmed on the border in Crimea, and it's like logic dictates that they would just come to connect with their forces in Donbas. So I knew if we stayed in Mariupol, eventually we're going to be cut off, just because we don't have like the manpower to deal with this because of the whole country being under attack. So I think. I mean, it was a worrying development, and like it's not like the best thing you want to know. But I think at the time, like I just like went with it. Like it's just like the way she goes.
Yeah, and so you were just defending Ilich, right? And
yeah. So
when did it reach a breaking point?
So the breaking point for the Ilichar Steelworks, it was around probably the 5th or the 7th of April, and by that point, like we're just continuously getting hammered by airstrikes. And on the 10th or the 11th, like in the weeks leading up to April, we'd been like while the guys who were fighting, defending the outer like steelworks area, like myself and like the other guys who were inside, like doing the logistical stuff, we were also helping like prepare like the vehicles to like try and make a break. So we were like, because it was a steelworks, there was plenty of like steel and like welders and stuff. So we were pretty much like welding like steel plates onto the side of the trucks to like try and give some sort of protection. Because the idea was that we were going to load up into the trucks and make a break for Zaporizhia.
And were you with Sean at this point? Because Sean had a similar story about how they were trying to make a break.
Sean was in Ilichar. We weren't in the same location, but like when we had signal at the time, like when we had like when the cellular network was working, like we messaged each other, tried to find each other, but we didn't know where we were because it's such a big territory. So like we weren't that far away, but like within the size of the territory, like we're still pretty far. And like for the whole duration, it was just like preparing the vehicles, and eventually on the night of the 11th, we got the command. A bunch of units from like inside Mariupol left their positions, and they came to the steelworks. And there must have been like maybe like 200 like vehicles like ready to go, like BMPs, tanks, like all sorts of vehicles and units. And we were like ready to try and make a break for like breaking out of Mariupol and just driving as far as we could to the Ukrainian lines, which at that point were like 140 kilometers away.
Wow.
And it was the perfect weather as well. It was like foggy, like you couldn't see like 20 meters in front of you. So like it was perfect weather. And then at like last minute, it was like cancelled. Like I still don't know why. And then everyone went back to their positions, and it wasn't until the day after, because we had prepared all the vehicles to leave, like they were packed with all the ammunition, all the food and everything. Somehow, I still don't know how, but I believe we might have had a rat. Where the vehicles were parked, because we were in a huge factory, like it's parked under cover. Somehow they knew exactly where the trucks were, and they just destroyed it. We had all our ammunition like there as well, so it destroyed everything. So we had like fireworks going on for like a good couple of hours, and we were all in the bunker. Like we're not like, it's like literally like less than like 50 meters from where the ammunition's cooking off. And everyone can hear it cooking off, and then while that's cooking off, we're getting hit with like tank, and then there's like airstrikes coming in, and the mood in the bunker at this point is like pretty bad, because like now we've also got like a lot of people that like came from the hospital because they had to evacuate. and the Russians are like pretty much starting to encircle the territory of like the steelworks. So we're now in a double encirclement. So you could see the look on everyone's faces every time the tank shell would hit. Like stuff would like the pressure would like just get in your face. There'd be dust everywhere. So you knew like this is it. Like sooner or later we're gonna have to like.
How did you keep your mind straight going through all of that? Because you're basically encircled. They're like shelling on top of you. Like, do people go crazy in this situation, or you just feel hopeless, or?
I think hopeless would definitely be it, especially like because I remember seeing my battalion commander and like he looked really stressed. Like he went into like where we were smoking at the time. By this point, we'd run out of cigarettes, but like he's commander, so like as the military goes, like commanders always have a secret stash somewhere. But like you could see the look on his face, like he was like really like stressed because like of the situation.
Yeah.
And he was a good commander. Like he did his best for like the defense of Mariupol.
You say was? Is he?
No. He's
okay.
Yeah, it's just me with my bad grammar. So like he did a really good job. But like also like with that situation, like I don't know what else we could have done. So then later that night, again they went in kind of like headless chicken mode, like from higher up. And there was like 3 options we got given. Like my commander came to me and like said like everything's going to shit. Like you've got three options pretty much. Like you can try and break out in the vehicles of what's left and try and get to Zaporizhzhia, or you can try and walk out on foot and walk 140 kilometers, or you can officially surrender. Which at the point there was quite a lot of people choosing to surrender, but there was also quite a lot of people trying to walk out as well. I knew the if we tried to go out in the trucks, like it'd just be suicidal. Like there's no way we'd get out now, especially like the day before. If we'd done it then, we stood a chance. But like now they're expecting it, they're prepared.
And if so, you're still around at this point, and I can imagine you lost a lot of people from your units, right? What percentage do you think you still had from your original formation or units?
It's hard to say. I know in my company, like our company did pretty well. Our mortars, they got hit a few times, but luckily the guys survived. They got hit a few times from the like jets that were just doing strafing runs with the rockets. But I don't think we took any losses in our mortar company. But there was a few guys that chose to like walk out on foot. But the vast majority of my company, they chose to like surrender officially. And I remember I initially wanted to walk out, but I was a bit skeptical with like how many people are doing it, and with this second encirclement of the steelworks, I was really skeptical that we'd actually be able to get out unnoticed. So I thought the best idea would be to just surrender with my guys, so that at least that way there was like a 50-50 chance, like either I get killed, they shoot me, or I manage to survive and get back home.
So what is the process of surrendering?
So initially, when the people who wanted to leave, they left, and at this point, there's probably like 400, 500 people in the bunker left, like with the injured. The then acting commander of the bunker, after the other commanders had chosen to like escape with the others, he contacted the Russian military through the radio, and I remember speaking with him afterwards, and I was asking like, what did they say? They asked them like who do you want to surrender to? Do you want to surrender to the Russian Federation, or do you want to surrender to the DPR? And obviously my commander said the Russian Federation, because like they're an official state, so technically they should have like standards.
Yeah.
Technically. Yeah. So after that happened, like our commanders who were still around that were like acting in charge, like they told us what was going on. They told us to get our weapons, like line them up there, and basically just get ready to go to the surrender point. And at that point, like I started going through all my stuff. I started destroying like I had like a DSLR, so I was destroying all my camera equipment, because I've got like so much stuff on there that I've been taking like document of like everything that we've been doing in the factory, like covering everything, with the hope that eventually if we did get out, I'd be able to like share it with everyone. So I destroyed all that, destroyed the memory cards, and then I was getting ready to destroy my phone, and then I saw that Starlink was working. So I quickly logged on to Facebook and contacted my family and just like let them know, like, look, like, don't know how to tell you this, but I'm surrendering with my unit. Like, we've got no other option. Managed to wake my mother up because I was just sending messages, and I remember like I called her through Messenger and like I just told her like what's about to happen.
How did she react?
I think she was in shock at the time, which is understandable. It was like also like 2 a.m. in the morning when I spoke to her. And then I remember I managed to get a message to my friend. I think I messaged my friend Damien. I just told like people who I could get a contact of, like what's happening. And then I decided that like while there's internet, I'm going to go up topside and make a video where I made a selfie video just explaining what's going to happen. Because at that point, like I was pretty sure that like with me being a foreign, they might just decide to just shoot me. I'd already seen on the Wagner Telegram that one of my friends had shown me like previously, like while we were in Mariupol, that like one of the Wagner Telegrams like put a post out saying that I'm in the city and that I'm like wanted. So I knew like people are going to be looking for me like on the Russian side. So I decided to make a video because like the way I was like looking at it is like if they do kill me and if I surrender, at least that way like guys in my unit can see that I surrendered. But also people on the outside, when I get this video out, they can see that I surrendered. So if I did disappear, the state would be held accountable for that. I mean, not that I'd expect anything major to happen, but it would be known. And we eventually went to the rendezvous point when it became my company's turn to go there. We were put into the back of a truck, like it was our truck with our driver. And because of the territory of the steelworks is so big, we like drove for like 10 minutes just around the steelworks just to get to this meeting point. We unloaded and we walked to the meeting point with the Russian. He came to us, guided us back, and at this point we've all got our hands in the air. And there was a few videos of it that day where we're just being searched down by Russian Amon. They're checking our like passports and documents and stuff. And at this point everything's like pretty civilized, like there's nothing like bad, so to speak. And then they load us onto a bus. So like we're now in the custody of the Russians. They load us onto a bus, and we then get driven to a village called Sartanar, which is I'm like very familiar with. We've always been through there when we go to the frontline positions. We go there, we get into a warehouse, and as soon as we get off the bus, like that's when all the intimidation, all the like threats and violence starts.
How does it start?
So we got rushed off, and this is like when all the cursing, all the shouting starts. I mean, I'm not oblivious. Like I know, like going into captivity is not going to be like it's not going to be like 5-star like holiday resort.
But you don't speak Russian or Ukrainian, really.
I speak Russian, but I understand a lot more in Russian. But the good thing with me is, at least from my point of view, when I was in captivity, I struggle a lot with pronunciation. So I'll try to say something in Russian, and I'll end up just completely like messing it up, or I won't even bother trying. But like if someone speaks to me in Russian, I can understand quite a lot, like most of the time. So when I was there, we ran into this warehouse, a huge empty warehouse, and lined up against this wall. We got put in a stress position. We had to put our head against the wall with our hands behind our back, and we had to keep ourselves like off balance. And then someone would come behind you, put their head on your back, and we stayed like that for probably like we arrived there roughly around like 12 p.m. and we stayed in that position till like 6 a.m. the next day. Wow. But during this time, they were taking us out one by one out of the line to document us. And when it was my turn, they went through my veteran ID, and then they went through my military ID. And then when they got to my passport, I've got like a Ukrainian passport cover on it. So like it looks like a Ukrainian passport. And then when he's like flicking through, he quickly realizes it's not a Ukrainian passport. And as soon as he said that, he was like, Atkuda, which is like, where are you from? Yeah. And I was like, Velika Britannia. And like I said, Great Britain. And as soon as I said that, like I just got a punch to the face. And he slapped me around a few times, but like at that point, like, I mean, I was scared, but like I kind of like took it under the chin because like it's front line, like adrenaline, nothing too bad. And then he cocked his weapon, and then I shit myself. So it was like hard to understand like if he's going to shoot me right now or not. Luckily he didn't. It's just intimidating me. And then I got put back into the line, and then later that day I was taken back out, and no, yeah, we stayed there, and then the next morning I was taken out, and the guys from the MGB, which is basically the Donetsk like FSB, they pulled me out. They were doing tactical questioning with me, like trying to work out if they should take me or not. Obviously they would. So they were asking me all sorts of questions. And before those guys came, I was taken out again as well by and put into the back of like a Russian Tiger vehicle, which is a Russian armored vehicle. And I'm pretty sure the guys that I spoke to in this were FSB because like they had all the Gucci gear. They were wearing civilians. They had like laptops and like mobile printers and everything. So they're just like asking me questions. I gave him my military ID and gave him my passport. And then the thing that like made me suspicious was when they finished with me, they didn't beat me or anything. They was just like very quick questioning. And they gave me my passport, but they kept a hold of the military ID. So I got a bit worried with that because like my military ID was the thing that like confirmed I was a military serviceman. So I kind of realized at that point what's going on, so to speak. So then later, after I'd done the questioning with the MGB guys, I got called again, and as soon as I get to the door, they put handcuffs on me. They casually like take me over to the car and put me in the back. Again, it's like pretty casual, like they're not intimidating me, so to speak.
Yeah.
Which is a bit weird for me because like I don't know what to expect. But then as we're driving out of this compound, like one of them turns to me and said like, "Now we're going to take you to be shot." He said it in Russian, so I just pretend I didn't understand it, and I was just like processing this in my head. So I think for like the first like half an hour, like I was just like thinking about my family and everything, just like processing like, okay, this is how I go, like this is how I go, so be it. And then like after an hour, I was like, if they wouldn't drive me for like an hour to shoot me, so I figured we're being taken somewhere, and the route we were going was past like all the areas that I was familiar with, like from being on the front line. So I knew we were going down the highway down towards Novozovsk. And at this point, I can still see they didn't put a bag on me for some reason.
Were you by yourself or with other people?
I was just by myself at this point. There was 3 other Russians. So we're going down the highway, and I'm thinking like maybe we're going to Russia because this highway goes to the Russian border. And then we get to Novozovsk, and again, like I know this area very well because like I've been based near it for like the past 3 years, so I've like studied the geography of the area. And we get to there's a turning in the road. One way goes to Donetsk, and one way goes to Russia. And I don't know why. I thought for some reason if we went to Russia, it might be better. Obviously, I'll get to that later. But we ended up turning left, and then I knew like, okay, I'm going to Donetsk. And then at that point, they told me to put a bag on my head. They didn't have a proper bag. They just found a plastic carrier bag, and I was just like, okay, I'll put it on. I was still able to see through the little holes. And eventually we get to Donetsk, and we go in this car park. It's like dusk at the moment, like pretty dark.
So it's Donetsk City or Donetsk?
Donetsk City.
Okay.
And I remember I knew we were in Donetsk because I remember the cobblestone roads. And I'd read something about like Donetsk having a lot of those, and especially with the direction we went, I knew it had to be Donetsk. And then we got there. I was taken out of the car, and as soon as I was taken out of the car, the guys took the handcuffs off, and then there was a guy just stood in front of me, like in a blue uniform. Like he asked me a question, like in Russian, but like his accent was like really thick, like Gopniki, and I couldn't understand what he said. And me being me, like I politely asked him in Russian, like can you repeat what you said, please? And as soon as I said that, like he just started beating me with like the police baton. I fell to the floor, and then he just continued to wail on me. And also at this point as well, he'd stabbed me in my shoulder. But I didn't know this because I was being beaten, so I didn't feel it. And then he dragged me into the building, and I was taken into this room. and just this empty room. I can see like scattered clothing on the floor. So I was like fuck, like
Yeah.
this is that room that I've been like, because during the journey there, like I knew, like I was preparing myself mentally that okay, like I'm about to be like I'm gonna go through the worst pain ever. So I was preparing myself mentally because I knew, like, I mean, if you have any awareness of like anything like in regards to captivity, like even if you just read about it, you know it's not going to be nice. Like, so I knew, especially with my knowledge of like Russian captivity, like from what I've read about Chechnya, Georgia, like Moldova, and like Syria, like in terms of like how they've treated prisoners of war, like I know like what's coming next, and it's going to be very like violent. So I knew it wasn't going to be a walk in the park. It's just going to be very tough, and I was trying to prepare myself mentally for that. So when I was in that room, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
like
here it
this is it. And he continued beating me for like the next like 3 hours, but like every time he would ask me a question, and it's all in Russian, and I'm just like answering yes or no. But every time I'd answer, it would always be a beating, like regardless of what I said. Initially, he was saying like I was a mercenary. I was like, no, like I'm serving the Ukrainian Marines, and I told him my unit number. He continued beating, and then at one point he was having a cigarette, and I swear to God, like every time I remember at the time, like I remember I was so like scared at that time when I saw this, but at the same time I was like thinking like, did he really just say this? And he had a cigarette. It was like relaxing, like having a rest from beating me. And it was like, do you know who I am? And I was like, no. And he said like, I am your death. And at the time, I was like so scared when I heard him say that. But at the same time, like I was like pretty cringy. Like he actually said it. And then just after he said that, he said like, "Did you see what I did to you?" And I was like saying, "Yeah, like beat me." And I says, "No, like, did you see what I did to you?" And then he pointed to my shoulder, and then I saw that I was like stabbed. And then as soon as I saw that, that's like when everything like dropped. Like that was the moment I thought like I'm not gonna leave this room alive, because I prepared myself to be beaten. I just didn't expect to be stabbed, especially like in there.
Yeah.
And I think it was like after that, that's when I just started to like think like, okay, I'm not gonna leave this room. And then he continued to beat me a bit more. And then at one point, like I lost consciousness for like 10 seconds or something, and then woke up, and then started beating me. And all this whole time, there was another like Russian guy in the background just observing. And eventually, I just remember hearing him like telling him like, "Stop, you're gonna kill him." And I'm like pretty dazed and like exhausted. Like I can feel myself like dropping back into like like I know I can remember thinking back like I'm not gonna last much longer, like staying awake. And then he stopped, and then this Mr. Nice Guy, bad cop, good cop routine thing. He like says like, "We can talk now if you want to." And I was like, yeah, let's talk. And he took me into the second room. He said like, "Don't worry, we'll get a medic to like sort you out." And did a whole did a whole like
checkup?
not a checkup. My whole history, like, interview.
Yeah.
And initially he said like, "Are you like, are you MI6?" No, he said, "Are you SAS?" And I says, I mean, I'm not as fat as I am now, but like back then, like I wasn't like SAS like fit. Like if you looked at me, like you wouldn't think I'm special forces, obviously. And I remember he asked me like, "Are you SAS?" And I was like, "Dude, like, look at me, like, do I look like I'm SAS?" And he said, "Oh, good point." And then he asked me like, "Am I MI6 or have I had any contact with like intelligence services?" Like, dude, like I'm assistant gunner in like a mortar company. Like, I'm a private. Like, why would I be in this position? And again, like he's like, "Okay, that's a fair point." And he was asking me about my whole history, about how I came to Ukraine.
And so like at this point, you were tortured, you were being questioned, and then you were put in like some sham trial. Or
yeah, so we were put into like the investigators came the next day. They were doing this whole like, again, they interviewed us, interviewed me, and when it got to the court date when they had finally charged us, like in this prison where we were, like put into this like small little room. We had like 30 people in there, like probably the size of this like table here.
Was Sean in there with you?
No, he was in a different site at the time. I didn't know it though. We had like 30 people. We were given like a piece of bread like once a day, like a tiny piece of bread and just enough water to keep us alive.
And how long were you in captivity before the trial?
So I was kept in this place for 1 month, and then I was moved to the Donetsk pretrial detention prison. And from that point, I was there till I was released. But this is still a different location from where all the other foreigners are kept. So I didn't know where those guys were.
Yeah, and you were just getting fed like one piece of bread like per day?
Yeah,
or?
So in the first prison, we were fed like one piece of bread. The Russians, they'd caught on to like my social media with like CossackGundi, like they knew who I was and they wanted to exploit it. So like as soon as they found that out, I remember the second day in captivity, the NGB guys came. They were like talking about my social media, like, and then they brought up they gave me like actually a compliment with my social media, which was like ironic. They were talking about my name, CossackGundi, and they're like, so like CossackGundi, how did you like what is that? And he was like, oh, it's Cossack for Ukraine and Gundi for Syria. And they were like, it's original, I like it. And I was like, okay. But they exploited me for the propaganda because at the time they saw that I had like 117,000 followers. So they would come like five times a week. They would get me to film all sorts of propaganda videos. I'd be calling all sorts of governmental departments. At one point, they got me to call the DVLA, which is like it's like the license agency that you call to get your driving license. So they got me calling all these like random places, and it would be the same like the same script with like what I'd say with every like agency, like, hi, my name's Aiden Aslin, I'm a prisoner of war in eastern Ukraine, like along those lines. And they would always like get me to say like they want to exchange me and Sean for Victor Medvedchuk.
Oh wow. And before you said that, you made a left to Donetsk, and then you said, if you went right, you went to Russia.
Yeah.
Can you explain, like, because you said you were going to come back to that? Like, what happens if you went to Russia?
So initially, I thought maybe if we get taken to Russia, like this is like my hopes and dreams at the time, because obviously I know what the reality is. I was like kind of hoping that if we did go to Russia, it might not be so bad. But I remember when I got to the pre-trial detention prison, at some point we had a guy who got transferred to our like prison cell, and he'd previously been in Russia. Like he was captured in Mariupol. He got taken to Russia, and he was in some black site there.
Like on Rostov, or
it's probably somewhere in Rostov. Okay. He wasn't entirely sure, but he said it was next to an airport, and it was a proper like FSB black site, and they just got beaten, tortured like non-stop there. And
what kind of torture did he say?
Like they were using like wooden planks to strap the. It's just like hard to describe it, but they would put you in like these really weird positions with the planks, and then they would either like lift the planks up and like let you hang there, or they would just beat you or electrocute you. The one that he described was weird, and then he also described they would tell you to like put your arms against there, like you'd be chained, and then they'd just beat your legs, and then you'd have to stand there for like 20 hours. So they did all sorts of crazy stuff there, and I was like, okay, like maybe I got off a bit, but I mean, obviously in Donetsk it was still just as bad. I mean, if you've spoken to Sean, he was in a different like.
Yeah, he got electrocuted. He was saying.
Yeah, he actually got electrocuted because of me.
Because of you?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
So originally there was like when I got captured, I was told that he was killed, and eventually I can't remember what it was. I'd have to read my book because I've forgotten like most of it. But there was some information that I think it was about him being in Azov, and I mentioned about him being in Azov, I think, because they brought up about me and Sean being snipers. So I think because he mentioned me and Sean were snipers, so at that point I thought that maybe they already found out about like his like Azov background, and then because they said he was dead, I thought, okay, like if I lie, like they're just gonna fuck me. So I think that was the reason that went through. I mean, of course, I didn't know what Sean's situation was. But we have like banter now. Like every time we like see each other, so like we have like a bit of banter with it. And I think it wasn't until it was probably like the week and a half before we went to court that I mean, I knew Sean was alive like later on because like we were doing the propaganda calls and my mum would tell me like, not my mum, the Foreign Office would tell me that they've spoken with like Sean or something like they. So I knew at some point later on down the line, like he was alive, but I wasn't 100% sure.
For the people at home watching, we're talking about Sean Pinner.
Yeah.
We just
And then
Sean,
it was when we got sent to like some pre-court like health checkup. That's when I first saw Sean and Ibrahim, the Moroccan guy who was with us as well. And I remember seeing Sean, and I was like, "Oh, you're alive." So like we're having a like health checkup and just trying to like exchange like information. Yeah. And I remember saying like, I think we're fucked. Like I don't think we're gonna get out this one.
Yeah, and then so you had the court or the trial. You were sentenced to death.
Yeah.
And then how long before you kind of got in this prisoner exchange? Like,
so we had the court trial. Yeah. We knew straight away like it wasn't going to be in our favor. Obviously, it's like Russia, but we did try to like fight it, so to speak. Like we initially pleaded not guilty to the mercenary charge because we had 3 charges. We had attempting to overthrow the Donetsk constitutional power. And then we had like terrorist weapons training, which they got us for being in boot camp. And then we had the mercenary charge, but we knew if we got the mercenary charge thrown out and we can prove that we're not mercenaries by like our contracts or everything else. And we pleaded not guilty to the mercenary charge. And then after we did that, like whole courtroom went in sort of like a frenzy. And we asked to speak to our like fake lawyers. And he came over and it was like, why did you say that? And I was like, we're not mercenaries. Like we're enlisted in the Ukrainian military. Like we're officially protected by the Geneva Convention and international law. And then that's when he turned around and said like international law doesn't exist here. And after that, we was like, okay, we'll just plead guilty. Like, we're not going to win this. So, and then after that happened, we're sentenced to death. My mental like state at this point had taken a drastic bad turn because I was with other Ukrainians, but like it wasn't like I made good friends with the guys I was with. But for me, like it wasn't people that like I could speak really good English with. I had one guy who was a really good friend that I made in captivity. Like 2 friends, Victor. We spoke in like Russian. He was my battalion major, so we got on like pretty well, and he like helped teach me the Russian anthem. Because in this prison where we were, they forced you to sing the Russian anthem, and if you didn't sing it, you get beat.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So every morning you'd have to wake up, you'd sing the anthem, and I remember the Russians they were a bit lax with me with like learning it. Okay, so like you're a foreigner, you've got like a week to learn it, and I remember asking Victor because with the Ukrainians you have like. If you arrive at like 7 p.m., they expect you to know the anthem the next morning. But with me, like they gave me like some privilege with like length to learn it. But they said if I don't learn it, they're going to beat me. But Victor like was helping me learn it because I asked him like, so what happens like if I can't learn it by tomorrow? And he says, oh, they're going to f*** me and then they're going to f*** you. And they do it in this because every time you arrive to this prison, like when we first arrived, you go through process, you get a bag on your head and you've just done a medical and everything. And then you get told to lay on the floor and they beat you as you like crawl to the cell. So like we're in this like solitary confinement cell, like it's probably like that width and you can, it's not very big. And we had like 5 people in there. And you stay in there like 24 hours a day.
Yeah, so you're getting no exercise. You're barely getting fed. How much weight did you lose? Like,
well, at this point, once we got to the prison, like the food situation kind of improved. I mean, it wasn't the best. We were still like getting like bad portions, but it was like better than the 1 piece of bread a day. But I remember before I went into captivity, I was like weighing 127 kilograms, I think, if that's correct. And I lost about 28 kilograms like when I came out. So
in what time span is this? Like how long?
This is like 5.5 months in
5.5
total.
months. Oh.
And like just like the whole process, like at this point, like the only time I get taken out to do propaganda, like they're still just taking me out like every day to pretty much to do this propaganda stuff. They even set up a YouTube channel at one point, which annoyed me because it took so long for YouTube to actually act on it and get it taken down. And obviously there was like the Graham Phillips, the proclaimed journalist of Donbas. So there's a lot of like characters that I met from.
Oh, who was this guy? Texas.
He was like
Tejas.
Tejas.
Yeah, he was like this American guy.
Yeah,
so remember he died.
So he
and you were like celebrating it.
He ended up getting FAFO'd. He came over in I think it was like 2014 on the Russian side. And while we were in I knew full well who he was because I had studied like everything with Donbas. I knew who all the characters were, so I knew who he was. And at one point in captivity, we were interviewed by I think it was Russia One, and they showed us a video that Tejas had done for us. Unfortunately, because the Russians are like pretty incompetent with like stuff, they ended up showing me the video that was like meant to be for Sean. So like Tejas is like talking to Sean, but through me. Talking about like him having like friends in Ireland and stuff, and that's how I knew it wasn't for me, because he was like talking about Sean like being in the troubles and stuff. But it was funny because Tejas, he was talking about like he's going to go down to the river and enjoy a barbecue like with his family. And I remember like a couple of weeks ago when I saw on the news that he ended up disappearing. Like I was like, that's like pretty much karma.
Yeah, it's super karma. Then he got beaten, he got abused.
And the funniest part is like these were his own people. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, in Ukraine, like you know, there is like certain like cases of where there's like been people killed, but like every time I see something on the Russian side, like it's pretty like lawless, like mafia like style. Like
he got decapitated too, right?
Yeah, like pretty like the system over on the Russian side is just completely mob rule. Like. Like I see so many like instances of where like someone's like said something about a certain person and they just end up disappearing and found in the side of the road.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to the Ukrainian side, like the Russian side is pretty like lawless in regards to like if you know the right people, you can do whatever you want. Yeah. And if you piss off the wrong people, like you can be disappeared.
It's
very
like a big
easily.
mob country.
Yeah.
Yeah. That has a big gas station.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, we're running short on time, but I really want to get to the end of this story. So you been sentenced to death. You're in DNR, right? DPR. And then when do you find out that you were going to be in this prisoner exchange, or did you not find out? And then all of a sudden, what?
So we were taken out and loaded into a truck, and we're like hogtied, and we get driven into Russia. I was only able to know this because I could see out.
And you're 7 months in captivity at this point.
This is like 5.5 months.
5.5 months. Okay.
And then eventually we get to the airport. We get taken off.
Do you know which airport?
It was the Platov airport in Rostov Oblast. Because I remember seeing the sign when we were in the terminal. And we got in, we saw the Saudis, saw Roman Abramovich, and we waited like a couple of hours.
But you had no idea what was going on?
Yeah, we didn't know what was going on. We had like speculation, and then it wasn't until we got on the plane that we realized we're going home.
What was speculation?
We just thought maybe we're going to be like taken in deeper into Russia or like
Gulag.
So then we ended up going to Saudi Arabia. We landed in Saudi Arabia. We were met by like our government representatives, and then went to the hospital, and then we were taken to Britain. We were reunited with my families.
How was it like in Saudi Arabia? Really quick.
No, it was pretty cool. I mean, after they helped us with that, like I can probably say that the Saudis have never done anything wrong in their life. So.
And how does it feel being traded for Viktor Medvedchuk? Because he was quite a valuable person that Russia wanted back.
Yeah, so like, I mean, I'm glad it happened. I mean, otherwise I'd either still be in captivity or I'd probably be dead. I'm glad it happened, and I'm glad that Ukrainians managed to get a lot more people than what the Russians were initially asking. Because initially they just wanted Viktor Medvedchuk for me and Sean. And then in the end, they ended up getting 10 foreigners along with 255 Ukrainian soldiers. And in return, they got 55 Russians and Viktor Medvedchuk. So it was like kind of a win, like for the Ukrainian side. and so it's good. And like since then, like I spent like a year like just in recovery, like mentally. I came back to Ukraine like in June last year, and since then I was doing a lot of like volunteer work. I've been like doing a lot of talks to the British military, the Dutch military, and I also wrote my book Putin's Prisoner to let people in the West like to know, understand like why Ukraine can't lose, and also understand like who I am as a person, so they don't just think of me as like some war tourist, like a adrenaline junkie person. And I ended up coming back, doing the volunteer work, and like I think it was around November, I went to the Avdiivka front line with my friend Rebecca. Have you interviewed Rebecca yet?
I really want to. It's like Makowski is her last name. Or
Yeah. So
yeah,
I went.
but she's really involved in what she's doing.
Yeah. So I went to go. I was actually going there to go film a documentary, like for my own personal YouTube. And then I got there, and like after a week of being there with her, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to just stay here with you and just help. And then it was that moment that I realized like I want to come back to the front line. And we ended up like doing some stuff around Avdiivka, like helping give units like needed the supplies and all sorts of stuff. And then I think it was around in April time, I speaking to my friend Paul, who's in the International Legion, and I said to him I'd met him the year previously at a like dinner party in Kiev, and so that's how I knew him. And then I remember I messaged him. I was like, hey, like can I join? Because at that point I wanted to get back into the military. Like mentally, I started to get better. I mean, still at the moment, I'm still trying to recover. Like after captivity, you don't 100% always recover. You get better, but you'll never 100% recover from like what you've been through. At least that's my personal belief.
But so you still have trauma? Like, are there certain things that trigger it, or is just something that's
I have
in
a few things that
mind?
trigger it. I mean, it's not as bad as it was a year ago. But like at the moment, I'm going through rehabilitation. I'm about to like finish. I finish like next week. So I've been doing like a lot of work with psychologists. I mean, I'm on like antidepressants. I've been on those for like the past year, and like since I've been on those, like they've helped a lot. The only thing that I'm working on now is like just getting my fitness back in order because of like the mental trauma and stuff. Like it took a negative toll on like my physical fitness because of just not wanting to do anything and stuff like that. So like since I've rejoined the military, like mentally I've become a lot more healthier minded. Because I'm back in this environment that I comfortable in. I've been in the military in Ukraine for like 4 years. So for me, when I got sent back to Britain, like it was a shock for me because I've just been in this environment, especially with Mariupol. When we got released, like we had the trauma from captivity, but we'd also hadn't processed the trauma from Mariupol with the like mass shelling and like airstrikes. And then being in Britain, I couldn't return to Ukraine so quickly because of some travel reasons with Germany. Because when I got captured, they didn't want the Russians to use my passport. So I had to wait for that to get sorted. But at the same time, I had a lot of trauma-related issues, especially not being able to connect with anyone that experienced what I experienced. So that was a major factor in me in just becoming worse mentally. I mean, at one point in captivity, I was pretty close to just committing suicide. Luckily, I didn't because of my friend Prebik. He was the only reason that I didn't do it. So being vulnerable in Britain with no one to speak to, that could relate. That took a very negative turn for me. The only person I could speak to was Sean, but still I wanted to be able to meet guys that got released that I'd been with in captivity. And it wasn't until 6 months later I was able to return, and then I met all my friends that I knew from before, and then one by one I'd hear about guys being released.
And going through what you've been through, you must have a lot of animosity towards Russians, right?
I'd probably say when I got released, I was still pretty on the moral side. I mean, since I've been released, I've met countless Russian POWs. Last November, I went to the prisoner of war camp in West Ukraine, and I still felt bad for them. I didn't feel any hatred towards them. I actually had a little interesting conversation with one guy. I didn't tell him who I was. Like, I caught him at a time when I felt was appropriate. Because the POW and it's like pretty impressive. Like, I was trying to come at it at like a skeptical point of view because like I didn't want to go in there and like say like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is. I went in there like with a possibility that this is probably for show.
Yeah.
So I was trying to approach it with that like mentality. But when I was there, like, I was trying to like see if there's anything that caught my attention, and it wasn't really. And I went into the library and there's just this like guy in there like organizing books and stuff, and I managed to speak to him like by himself. And I was like speaking. He didn't know who I was. I was just like speaking with him. And I asked him how he got captured. He was like mobilized, and I asked him like, do you want to go back? And he was like, no, I'd rather stay here.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Do you know where in Russia he was from?
He was from the Luhansk region. He was mobilized.
Oh wow.
Yeah. But like he said, like he would rather just stay here. He didn't want to go back because he said if he goes back, then he's just going to be sent back to the front. So.
Yeah.
And then I met a couple of like POWs on the front line. So I haven't really got any animosity towards them. But I think now, like with the war dragging on, like it's hard for me to keep my morals up. But at the same time, I have to like remember we're better than them. So I think in reality, the only people that I truly have hatred for are the commanders, and like Putin and like his gang. Like for the average Joe that's like mobilized into the military, like not really any hatred, like just circumstance. As far as I'm aware, like once the weapon is gone, like they're just no longer in the war. So
okay, so I just want to ask, I guess, one last question before we wrap it up. So what is your life like now?
So
you
now
still want to fight, right? From what I understand.
I would like to fight, but obviously like I'm a fat fuck at the moment, so I've got to get my physical fitness back into shape, but also I can't really fight because of the circumstances of the exchange. There's nothing really officially barring me from fighting, but given with the circumstances of the high nature like of our exchange, if I was to go back to fighting, it might cause some issues like with future exchanges. So at the moment, I rejoined the military and joined the International Legion under Gore. And now I can't go into details with what I do, but like I'm pretty much just doing whatever I can do to help like the unit and also help get funding and like donations. I also help with doing whatever tasks we're set to.
Yeah.
And
so it's
also
not a combat role, right?
Huh?
It's not a combat
Yeah, so
role.
I'm in a non-combat role. I mean, ideally, I'd like to in the future, but I just don't want to risk the exchange stuff. And then I'm also on the sideline. I'm also working in a charity that's organized by like veterans of Ukraine, like American veterans, with our charity Victory Team. So it's like me and my friend Paul, who I mentioned, who I talked to about joining, and we've got a few guys that like fought in Ukraine that were injured, and basically our Victory Team's goal is to get the units on the front line like the stuff that they need, especially with us being like veterans. Like we understand what's needed and what's the best item to buy compared to like buying I don't know, knockoff like night vision. Like we know what's genuine night vision and what's knockoff, so we always get like the best stuff for the guys.
What's the organization called?
Victory Team.
Victory Team. Okay. And last question, then we'll wrap it up. Say the war ends, doesn't matter like on whose terms. What are you doing?
Honestly, I think if the war ends, I don't really know. I'm probably going to end up like my contract finished like after 3 years. I was like, I hated the military. I wanted to get out, and then like a week before I was due to finish, my commander came to me and said like, "Do you want to enlist for another year?" And I just said yes. What's the worst that can happen? And so I probably think if the war ends, I'm just probably going to end up staying in the military because I like the lifestyle.
And you want to live in Ukraine though?
Yeah. So like I've lived in Ukraine now for like 6 years or 5 years now. No intention of like leaving Ukraine. And as I always say, like I might be British like by blood, but like in my heart, like I'm Ukrainian.
Yeah, I feel the same, man.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're putting your life for Ukraine. It's very respectable, man. So we can end that here. So I'll tell you what. This is the point of the podcast, part of the podcast, where you can like look in this camera. You can plug your social media, your charitable organizations, the one you just mentioned, or it's anything you want to tell the people at home. Yeah. So just talking to that camera there.
I mean, if you wanted to follow me on like social media, I've got my Twitter, otherwise known as x.com, CossackGundi, or on Instagram, CossackGundi, and then our charity organization, the Victory Team. You can find us on both Twitter and Instagram, or you can just go on Google and type in victoryteam.ua, and you can find us that way.
All right, great. No, it's been a pleasure having you, Aiden. I'm just gonna sign off really quick. So yeah, thank you so much for watching at home to another episode of Expats in Ukraine. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up. If you are watching the premiere, I'll try to convince Aiden to be here live, chatting with you guys. I'll most likely be here live. And yeah, if you want to leave a comment that Aiden will read, just leave a comment down below, and we'll definitely look at that as well. If you have an idea for future guests, also recommend some. Yeah, I'm always looking for new, interesting people such as Aiden. And Aiden, thank you so much for joining me on Expats in Ukraine. So what I like to do at the end is maybe like, shake your hand, give you a thank you on this side.
Okay.
So thanks, bro, for coming out. I really appreciate it. Cheers, man.